Good evening and thanks for joining us for Alaska weather. I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen. If you need a forecast on the fly, you can always get it via phone at 1-800-472-0391. You can also visit us at the National Weather Service on our website, weather.gov/Alaska. As always, if you have any feedback or comments for us, feel free to email us anytime at nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. Looking at the hazardous weather that we're expecting over the next couple of days, we have a couple of watches and warnings that are going to be in effect. The first is the red area that you see on the map. That's going to be a red flag warning for the Susitna Valley. We're expecting hot, dry, and windy conditions on Thursday afternoon that can lead to the rapid ignition and growth of fires. So be careful certainly in that area if you need to do any burning over the next couple of days, and be sure to check with your land agencies before doing any burning to make sure that conditions are okay to burn. We also have a fire weather watch in effect in the orange area on the map for the Yukon Flats, the central interior, and the middle Tanana Valley. That's going to be for Friday afternoon as well as Saturday afternoon for those same conditions of potential for hot, dry, and windy. We're expecting temperatures to trend upward those days as well as winds to pick up to some extent. So low relative humidity, warm temperatures can lead to the rapid ignition and spread of fires. As we'll talk about in our weather for the next couple of days, there's also a slight chance of some thunderstorms in the area that could worsen that fire danger for Friday. Moving to our breakup update, we're focusing on the North Slope rivers and got some good reports late in the day yesterday after the fog was able to clear. There was some good reconnaissance that came in that told us that there are some open areas on all of the North Slope rivers, but we want people to know that, especially along the coast of the North Slope rivers, there is a heightened chance for ice jams through the weekend as those rivers start to break up. So be on the lookout for ice jams and rising waters on those rivers as the water gets stuck behind any ice jams. It could lead to river flooding of the low areas around those rivers. We still expect all of the North Slope rivers to finish breakup and be completely open probably by the end of next week, if not a little bit sooner. We'll continue to keep you updated on our show every day with the latest information. Looking at our satellite imagery, the clearest feature that we have is our low pressure system moving northward into the Gulf today. You can see that counterclockwise rotation around that low pressure system. And it's spreading some high cirrus clouds into the southern panhandle this afternoon. No rain yet with that, but we'll certainly see that spreading in the next couple of days. For today's weather, we're looking at a slight chance of some thunderstorms across the interior from about the peak of the Brooks Range south to the Yukon River and into the Yukon Delta. Rain showers south of there into the southwestern portions of the state as well as the northern Alaska Peninsula. Fog continues today along the North Slope as well as the Chukchi Sea coast and the western portions of Seward Peninsula. That low pressure system that we can see on satellite moving into the northern Gulf, spreading some rain showers up the coast of British Columbia, but not quite making it to the panhandle today. We also have low pressure in the western Aleutians, spreading rain into most of the Aleutians today. For tonight, probably the biggest story is that fog along the northwestern and northern portions of the state. We expect temperatures to drop below freezing there tonight, which means that fog will turn into freezing fog, which can be dangerous as it can cause slick conditions with those fine fog droplets freezing onto cold surfaces. So be careful in those areas if you have plans to be out and about tonight or early tomorrow morning for that freezing fog. Our low pressure system in the Gulf continues to move northward, bringing a weakening occluded front, and we start to see rain showers coming into the far southern portion of the panhandle tonight. Expect fog in the inside waterways of the northern panhandle tonight. High pressure in command over the YK Delta, so dry conditions there all the way east through the interior and south through the Alaska Peninsula. We'll continue to see rain in the Aleutians as that low pressure system moves north from the western Aleutians. Thursday's weather, we are again expecting a slight chance of thunderstorms across the eastern interior near the Canadian border, with showers further west in the Brooks Range. Also showers spreading into the panhandle as that low pressure system, although weakening, continues to approach the area. Dry conditions for southwestern portions of the state and rain continuing in the Aleutians. We expect fog to stick around for the North Slope, the Chukchi Sea coast, and the western Seward Peninsula on Thursday, but as temperatures rise above freezing, that threat for freezing fog will end and it'll just be regular fog. So visibility concerns, but not so much slick conditions with those freezing fog droplets during the day on Thursday. For Friday, another day of a slight chance of thunderstorms across the interior. And this is the day that we have that fire weather watch in effect for the Yukon Flats, central interior, and the middle Tanana Valley. When we talk about temperatures, you'll see the warm temperatures on the map, but we can also see here that those areas are expecting sun on Friday afternoon. So that's going to raise those temperatures and not bring any rain, which could help to suppress any fire activity. So again, if you're in those areas and you have the need to burn over the next few days, it's not a good time to do that, and please make sure to check with your land agencies to make sure that it is safe before you do burn on any day. You have low pressure still moving into the northern Gulf, but weakening as it does so. So rain showers coming into the panhandle, also spreading a little bit to the northern Gulf Coast. Our low pressure north of the Aleutians also continues to weaken on Friday, but that rain continues to march east into the eastern Aleutians. We've got high pressure in command over the northern portion of the state with a ridge stretching across the western portion of the state, so expect those areas to remain dry and mostly sunny on Friday. For temperatures on Thursday morning, we're expecting lots of 40s pretty much across the board. The exception will be those temperatures dropping just below freezing for the North Slope and the northwest coast of the state, including western portions of the Seward Peninsula. That's what's going to allow that freezing fog to form in those areas, or that fog that's already there to freeze onto cold surfaces for Thursday morning. For the Aleutians, temperatures around 40 and also around 40 for the Kenai Peninsula, with low 40s for South Central and mid to upper 40s for the Panhandle on Thursday morning. Thursday afternoon, we start to see those warmer temperatures. We can see some warmer temperatures definitely into the 60s to near 70 in the Susitna Valley, where we have that red flag warning in effect for Thursday. Also warming temperatures across the eastern interior, the Yukon Flats, and the central interior. North Slope areas expected to reach close to 40 degrees on Thursday afternoon. Temperatures in the upper 50s to around 60 for South Central and upper 50s to mid 60s for the Panhandle. Even a couple of degrees warmer in the Aleutians on Thursday afternoon, with temperatures in the mid 40s. Temperatures Friday morning in the upper 40s for the Panhandle to around 50 for the Yukon Flats, and still just below freezing for the North Slope. And then Friday afternoon, we'll see our warmest temperatures reaching the mid 70s across the Yukon Flats, which is again when we have that fire weather watch in effect.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to a look at your aviation weather, starting with flying conditions for Thursday morning. We expect to see IFR conditions along the North Slope, as well as along the eastern Bering Sea from St. Lawrence Island down through about Bristol Bay, and through the central Aleutians. Also some IFR conditions in the northern Gulf as we see a low approaching that area. A little bit of improvement for the North Slope area on Thursday afternoon to marginal conditions. Still IFR for much of the eastern Bering through the central Aleutians and spreading further north into the northern Gulf area, but most of the mainland remaining VFR and some marginal conditions for the southern Panhandle. For Friday morning, we see a return to IFR conditions for that coastal North Slope area, with marginal conditions then spreading southward to the peak of the Brooks Range. IFR conditions still for the eastern Bering and the central Aleutians, and still in the northern Gulf for Friday morning. Some improvement again for the North Slope on Friday afternoon to mostly VFR conditions. Marginal conditions just along the immediate west coast of the state, and IFR conditions remaining in the eastern Bering as well as for the eastern Aleutians. IFR conditions still in the northern Gulf, but only marginal conditions making it to the land areas from the eastern Kenai Peninsula to the Panhandle. Pass conditions on Thursday, and AKwx Pass looking like marginal conditions for most of the day on Thursday, but some VFR conditions at the south entrance in the morning. Keep an eye out for some thunderstorms in the afternoon though. Same story at Adigan Pass, marginal for most of the day, VFR along the south entrance in the morning, but again keep an eye out for some thunderstorms possible in the area Thursday afternoon. Lake Clark and Merrill passes both looking like VFR on Thursday. Rainy and windy passes both VFR on Thursday, as well as Isabel Pass and Mentasta Pass VFR on Thursday. But around Mentasta Pass, again, keep an eye out for thunderstorms possibly on Thursday afternoon. Tanita Pass looking like VFR on Thursday, as well as Portage Pass VFR on Thursday, and Chilkoot and White Passes both expected to be VFR during the day on Thursday. Freezing levels, we've got a little bit of a complicated situation again. We've got two main areas of warmer air moving into the area. The first one is going to be out of the southeast across the Canadian Rockies. So we have those high 8,000 foot freezing levels moving into Western Canada and just east of the Alaska Panhandle. Another area of 6,000 to 8,000 foot freezing levels coming into the western Aleutians and central Aleutians, and then in the middle part of the state over the mainland, generally 4,000 to 6,000 foot freezing levels. For icing, we've got a number of different areas of isolated moderate icing, above 9,000 feet for both the northern Gulf as well as the Aleutians, above 4,000 feet for much of the Bering Sea, above 6,000 feet for the west coast, and above 7,000 feet for the eastern interior on Thursday. Jet stream winds, our main player is going to be a weaker jet that is coming out of the north and heading west over out of the south and heading west over western Canada between 60 and 90 knots. That's going to be mainly south of the Alaska Panhandle, with some minor jet streak about 30 to 50 knots out of the south over the Panhandle. A secondary jet streak about 60 to 70 knots out of the south over the central interior. At 9,000 feet, we have our main low pressure system in the Gulf with our main player with 30 to 45 knots of wind going in a counterclockwise direction around that low pressure system. A secondary low west of the western Aleutians with the strongest winds out of the south on the east side of that low, 35 to 40 knots. At 3,000 feet, our same two low pressure systems with about 40 knots of wind going in a counterclockwise direction around that low in the northern Gulf, and about 40 to 45 knots of wind on the east side of the low west of the Aleutians, so we'll see those winds out of the south across the central Aleutians. Turbulence on Thursday, we have a number of different areas. The biggest threat is going to be the possibility for some isolated severe turbulence across the central Aleutians. So that's going to be about below 4,000 feet. If you're planning on flying in that area, definitely be aware of that possible isolated severe turbulence. Also possible considerable moderate turbulence for the Chukchi Sea coast and parts of St. Lawrence Island below 4,000 feet and the Panhandle below 4,000 feet. Stay tuned for more Alaska weather after this.
On March 11, 2011, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake off the Pacific coast of Japan generated a tsunami. This series of ocean waves sped towards the island nation, with waves reaching 24 feet high. The result was devastation and utter destruction. Towns were engulfed by water and swept away. Farmland was flooded. Tens of thousands of lives were lost. The National Police Agency reported damages to hundreds of roads, bridges, and more than 100,000 buildings. The surging water flooded rivers and destroyed harbors. In some areas along the coast, tsunami waves reached 6 miles inland. Tsunamis not only cause severe damage when they first strike land, but also as the water recedes back to sea. Tsunamis can inflict this type of damage because of some unique features. As tsunami waves travel across ocean basins, they may be as little as a few centimeters high, but they extend down to the ocean floor. This is different than traditional waves, which are only surface features. Tsunamis can also travel hundreds of miles per hour in the open ocean. As these waves approach a coast, the shallowing ocean floor slows the waves down and pushes the water mass upwards. The quicker the ocean floor transitions from deep to shallow, the greater potential for a higher wave height. So, tsunamis that experience this sudden shift into shallow water can have the height and momentum to pack a serious punch. Unfortunately, Japan found itself in this scenario. This image shows how abruptly the Japanese islands rise out of the ocean. Other coastal areas in the region have much more gradual slopes. The earthquake on March 11th was the most powerful known to hit Japan, and the tsunami it created had the necessary ingredients to make it such a deadly and destructive force. "80 miles east of Japan, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake rocks the ocean floor. This disturbance causes a transfer of energy from the seafloor to the ocean, generating a series of ocean waves, known as a tsunami. In about 20 minutes, waves strike the Japanese coastline. Other nations go on high alert because the tsunami will propagate or spread throughout the Pacific Ocean. As the tsunami radiates outward from Japan, it encounters a variety of ocean features, such as ridges and underwater volcanoes, which guide the tsunami and create a complex pattern of scattering and reflective waves. In 8 hours, the waves reach the Hawaiian Islands, and in 9.5 hours, they hit the west coast of the United States. In 16 hours, the tsunami reaches the Indian Ocean and New Zealand, and by 22 hours, the entire Pacific Ocean had been affected. The impact of a tsunami can be highly variable because of the complicated interactions with ocean features and coastline elements. Wave height and speed will differ from place to place. Since tsunamis can be hundreds of miles long and travel thousands of miles away from where they originated, they are considered a worldwide threat when they form. These are the sounds of a tsunami warning. They alert residents that a killer wave is about to strike. These sirens, however, are just a small part of the sophisticated warning systems that played a role in Japan and in the US during the Pacific Ocean tsunami in March 2011. Most tsunamis are generated by an undersea earthquake. Fortunately, Japan has one of the most advanced earthquake early warning systems in the world. It detects tremors, calculates the epicenter, and sends out warnings from over 1,000 seismographs scattered throughout the country. The Japan Meteorological Agency issues the warnings and sends alerts to television and radio channels, the internet, and mobile phone networks. When the earthquake struck 80 miles offshore, warnings were generated in about 3 seconds. The tsunami warnings came 3 minutes later. These take longer because more complex calculations are involved and must factor in ocean data. Since the first tsunami wave struck the coastline within 20 minutes, the advanced warning provided some residents with crucial minutes to reach a safe area. While the earthquake sent powerful tsunami waves westward toward Japan, the tsunami also propagated east into the Pacific Ocean. Here, warnings are issued by the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, operated by NOAA in Hawaii. NOAA maintains a large network of buoys with ocean floor sensors that are strategically positioned in the earthquake-prone zones of the Pacific. This system collects vital ocean data for tsunami forecasting. On March 11th, only 25 minutes after the earthquake struck, the first buoy station measured the tsunami and relayed information to Hawaii. Scientists use this data to run models and issue forecasts and warnings to nations throughout the Pacific. From there, local emergency managers decided what actions were appropriate to take for public safety. The earthquake and resulting tsunami devastated the Japanese coastline, causing damage that will take years to repair. While we can't prevent these forces of nature from happening, our early warning systems can help us prepare for the dangers headed our way.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back for a look at the marine forecast. Starting out with the ice edge, we're seeing a thinning of the ice on the south side of St. Lawrence Island, as well as along the waters just at the opening of the Norton Sound, especially near the mouth of the Yukon River. So those are the areas that we expect that ice to be deteriorating over the next few days. Also on the north side of St. Lawrence Island, north of that high concentration ice near the Bering Strait, we'll likely see some deterioration there as well over the next few days. Marine forecast for southeast for Thursday. This is going to be the day that we have the highest winds and seas in the coming days, with the fetch coming from a strong low pressure system further south in the Gulf. So winds generally out of the southeast, 15 to 25 knots over the Gulf, and 10 to 15 foot seas. For those inside waterways, 2 to 4 foot seas with 10 to 15 knot winds. As that low pressure weakens, we will see seas coming down a bit, 7 to 11 feet for the Gulf side on Thursday, but those winds remain about 25 knots out of the southeast and east. Inside waterways, winds out of the south and southeast 10 to 20 knots, seas still 2 to 4 feet for Friday. For south central, winds generally out of a northerly direction, 10 to 15 knots over the Gulf and 10 to 20 knots over Cook Inlet, with 20 knots out of the northwest near the Barren Islands. Seas in the 9 to 10 foot range for the Gulf, just 2 feet in Prince William Sound and 3 to 5 feet for Cook Inlet. Friday's forecast, seas coming down a bit in the 7 foot range, still 3 to 5 feet for Cook Inlet though, and 3 feet for Prince William Sound. Winds 10 to 20 knots out of the east and northeast, so a little bit of change in wind direction for Friday. Thursday's forecast for the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, winds 15 to 25 knots out of the north and northeast. Seas on the Gulf side 8 to 10 feet, and on the Bering Sea side just 2 to 3 feet, with 3 feet in the Bristol Bay area. For Friday, winds shifting a little bit more out of the west in general, 15 knots across the board. Seas coming down a little bit on the Gulf side, 6 to 7 feet and 2 to 3 feet on the Bering Sea side. For the Aleutian chain on Thursday, we'll see winds generally 15 to 30 knots, with the lightest winds furthest east in the Aleutian chain, out of the southeast in general, but we've got a southwesterly direction for the western Aleutians at 20 knots for Thursday. Seas 7 to 12 feet on the south side of the chain and about 4 to 8 feet on the north side of the chain for Thursday. For Friday, we'll see seas coming up as well as winds, especially for those central Aleutians between Atka and Nikolsky. Seas peaking around 17 feet and winds peaking 35 knots out of the southeast. Winds in general for the central Aleutians coming up to about 30 knots, but for the western Aleutians, we'll see winds actually drop off a bit to about 10 to 15 knots with 8 to 9 foot seas on Friday. For the west coast, very light winds and small seas in Norton Sound, just 5 knots out of the northwest, but strengthening as we go further south, so 15 to about 30 knots for the Bering Sea, with seas 7 to about 13 feet, strongest or highest seas just west of about St. Matthew Island on Thursday. Heading into Friday, we'll see those seas a little bit further south, so just 8 to 13 feet for the open areas, 4 to 5 feet a little bit further north near the land, and winds 15 to about 30 knots on Friday. For the Arctic coast, 5 knots along the north slope and 15 to 25 knots along the west coast, with winds generally out of the south, just 2 to 4 foot seas outside of the ice. Winds picking up a little bit along the north slope on Friday, 10 to 15 knots, and 15 to 20 knots still generally out of the south. For the west coast, that's going to be what's deteriorating that ice edge. For tonight's weather, we've got low pressure moving northward into the Gulf. That's going to be bringing some showers to the very southern portions of the Panhandle, as well as some fog to the inside waterways of the northern Panhandle. Thanks so much for watching Alaska TV Weather.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.